now. So the meeting is on.
Thank you, Veronica. I'll go ahead and call to order the Transportation Advisory Board meeting for Monday, October 9th, 2023. Before we get started with business, we'll go over our technical rules. So I'll kick it back over to Veronica to go over our technical ground rules.
Okay. Could you let me know if you're able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we're pleased to
presentation.
have you join us today to strike a balance between meaningful, transparent engagement and online security. The following rules will be applied. This meeting has been called to conduct the business of the City of Boulder. Activities that disrupt, delay, or otherwise interfere with the meeting are prohibited. The time for speaking is limited to 3 minutes. No person shall speak except when recognized by myself, and no person shall speak longer than the time allotted. Each person shall register to speak at the meeting using the person's real name. Any person believed to be using a name other than the one they're commonly known by will not be permitted to speak. If you're on the phone, please use the raise hand function using the *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Oops. No video will be permitted except for city officials, employees, and invited speakers and presenters. All others will participate by voice only. I will be enforcing these rules by muting anyone who violates any rules. The Q&A function is enabled. It will be used for individuals to communicate with myself. It should be used for technical or online platform related questions only. Only the host and individuals designated by myself will be permitted to share their screens during the meetings. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Veronica. And it looks like Trini is in the attendees instead of the panelists. Hopefully we can get her shifted over. The third item on our agenda is the approval of the August 2023 minutes. I wasn't at this meeting, so I'll of course be abstaining. I heard Becky did a fabulous job chairing in my absence, so thanks again for doing that, Becky. Are there any amendments to the minutes that any tab members would like to bring forward? Not seeing any. I'll entertain Trini's in the panel section now, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
I move to approve the August 2023 minutes.
I second.
Thank you both. There's no other discussion. Those in favor? 4 votes with 1 abstention. Thanks, everyone. We'll now move to agenda item 4, which is public comment. Any member of the public wishing to address the board about a transportation-related matter will have up to 3 minutes to do so. If you're interested in speaking to us tonight, please use the raise hand feature within the Zoom platform, and our technical host will begin calling on you. And again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. It looks like Patricia is raising their hand. Could you confirm, Patricia, that you're able to speak?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, you may begin.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Patricia Whitaker, and I'm a 30-year resident of South Boulder. I'll start by stating that I support efforts to reduce traffic congestion and air pollution. Given the continued hope and focus of elected officials for people to walk and bike more, I'd like to bring attention to a couple things that I, as someone who walks daily, view as impediments. And I'd appreciate your input on how best to raise awareness about them. It was suggested by one of our mayoral candidates that I bring my concerns to this board. First, might there be a way to encourage the city to promote a fall cleanup campaign, one that requests anyone who has properties along sidewalks to trim back overgrown plants in their landscaping so that sidewalks are fully exposed to their entire width? This might be done through the city's newsletter, utility bill, mailed postcard, and/or next door. This is a good time to do so, not only for fall plant material cleanup and aiding tricksters seeking treats on dark Halloween night, but also it being prior to winter when shoveling will need to happen. Offer a reminder on that as well. I know about and have used Inquire Boulder to report overgrown sidewalk obstructions, but rather than provide a warning or fine, wouldn't encouraging community members to be considerate of others be a more proactive, kinder method? Ask residents to clear the way along property lines for people walking to school, to the bus, to the store, those walking dogs or pushing strollers, and people using walkers and wheelchairs. This I've experienced with my elder parents who had lived with us. How can we help those who walk, be it simply for their health or, more importantly, out of necessity? Second concern, with the influx of Lime scooters, I'm seeing poorly parked, disbanded scooters often in the sidewalks, and they are heavy to move aside. I was forced to recently near an assisted living facility when pushing my mom in her wheelchair, just taking her out for a stroll in the fresh air. Is there any etiquette around their use that you know of? Can the city send a letter requesting that Lime provide its users courtesy guidelines for parking scooters once done with them? Thank you for listening to my concerns, and I hope you'll join me in supporting safe, wide paths for pedestrians to navigate.
Thank you, Patricia. Those are certainly some good ideas for us to keep in mind. Might circle back to comments in a minute. Next up, I think we have Tom McKinnon.
Okay. Could you confirm you're able to unmute?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. You may begin.
Yes, okay, yes, yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom McKinnon. I live at 2218 Mapleton Avenue in Boulder. Tonight, I'd like to address what I think can only be called an epidemic of loud street racing noise in Boulder. It happens at all hours, mostly at night, mostly late at night when we're trying to sleep. The health effects of loud noises are well known, and even more so, the health effects of lack of sleep is better known. So it's an important issue for the city besides just being an annoyance. Loud aftermarket exhausts are illegal in Colorado. However, it's classified as a Class B infraction, and the fine is $15 to $100, no points. So I can only assume that it's not worth the effort of the police to do anything about it, given that penalty. So one thing is I'd like to see the city impose a large fine for noise violations. However, I fully recognize that this is virtually impossible to enforce because of the transient nature of the street racing. It's moving so fast. But what I'd like to report on tonight is that fortunately there's a viable technological enforcement solution. A company in the United Kingdom named Intelligent Instruments makes a photo microphone device. So very similar to a photo radar or a photo red light. When it senses a noise louder than the decibel threshold, it makes a recording of the sound and video and has software to do automatic license plate recognition. I've reached out to the company to get more information. I haven't heard back from them, but I've seen from other sources that the cost is about 30,000 US per unit. This is currently implemented in New York City and London. New York City for well over a year. London, don't have too many details about it, but there have been tests, pilot tests in Knoxville, Miami Beach, Washington D.C., and even in Longmont recently. So what I would suggest is that the TAB or the city form an ad hoc study group, members from the TAB, the police, and citizens to look into this to see if it would be viable for Boulder and make recommendations for the 2025 budget cycle. Thank you very much for considering my comments.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry to learn about your noise interruptions. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Now would be time to raise your hand. See Chuck Brock.
Okay. Could you confirm you're able to speak, Chuck?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you may begin.
Thanks. First of all, I'd like to very much thank the department for the construction of the beautiful facility at 30th in Colorado. I went to the ribbon cutting and it was really phenomenal to see what had been built there. I thought it was wonderfully done. Very expensive for sure, but it's a beautiful facility. And I think it will help a lot of students move from East Campus to main campus and other people get around a very tricky intersection that had a lot of serious crashes over the years. The other topic I'd like to bring up real briefly is snow clearing. It's October. We're going to have our first snow maybe later this week even. I'd really like to see a prioritization of bike routes especially those that are key connecting bike routes between multi-use paths. Little sections that are on streets, for example, Forest between the Growing Gardens and 19th Street is a classic example. Every winter that gets covered with snow and then it gets packed ice, and it's really impossible to go down. And there are several other streets like that. I don't know them all because I don't get around as much in winter, but I really like to see those prioritized. I know there's not a huge snow removal budget and we have to be careful about how it's spent. But I think given our priorities, transportation priorities, that this should really be a priority for snow removal across the city. Thank you very much. Thanks for your service.
Thank you. Looks like Lynn Siegel has her hand raised.
Lynn, could you confirm you're able to speak?
Yeah,
Perfect, thank you.
the,
Begin.
first of all, I wonder why Transportation Advisory Board didn't have something to say about the sprawl development of Waterview, especially in light of Jared Polis's big campaign against sprawl. You know, it's coming in right in the middle of that. There's a garage for every unit in that place, 400 some units across from the JCC. Just drives up the congestion on Arapahoe and all over Boulder for these kind of developments that are completely dependent upon getting out of the place. It's like an open air prison. And why don't you make the developers pay? Why don't you lobby the planning board that they can't produce things like this and like efficiencies and smaller units, which drives more developer interest and more physical people. And those people don't share cars. In communal housing, they do, but there's no pushing for communal housing at all in Boulder. It's all individual. And so those kind of models of living are just really archaic. I'm not from around here. I'm like from the Pacific Northwest where it's more normal. But here, the only thing you hear is growth, growth, growth. You know, LIHTC funds, low-income housing tax credits to push for more federal funds so that we can build more and more and more. And I don't care if it's transportation-oriented development, it's development, period. And it's not helping Boulder. And then there's no money for me to drive my bike around because, and I drive my car about twice a year. But it just really makes me angry when I have to dodge potholes, big potholes on major streets like 6th going through Mapleton. This is a main thoroughfare that gets through. It's more direct than 4th, or, you know, it's less direct than 9th, but I use it all the time. Big potholes and just seams and, you know, linear side things that you can really hurt yourself on your bike with. So make the developers pay, not the public. Make the developers.
Thanks, Lynn. Any other members of the public wishing to speak to us tonight? Not seeing any. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Lynn, you might be glad to know that later tonight we will be talking about some plans, a little more integration with transportation and planning. Chuck, thanks for reaching out to us always. Tom, that was a good idea. I've heard a little bit about that concept, and I know this staff and the state, through updated state law, that staff is able to look into more automated enforcement. I think this is a good idea you've flagged for them to potentially consider as well. And Patricia, I know the city has good communication strategies when it comes to snow removal, so this feels like a little bit analogous, just at a different season to that. Ryan,
Yeah, just real quick, you're
Mhm.
thanks, Alex. You were taking on what I was just thinking. There's a lot of really good input we just heard on this
Mhm.
on this vegetation hazards and the scooter hazards. I guess on scooters, do we have an item to address that at any point soon? I know it's pretty new. The scooter's out. We're probably hearing a lot from the public on the experience. Can anybody speak to should we plan to talk about that in a more organized way at some point soon?
We'd be happy to provide an update to you under matters at a future meeting, to just kind of provide some of the things we're working on. And Valerie, feel free to chime in here. I think just appreciated the comment that Patricia shared, and our team is doing a lot to address just the feedback we're hearing from the community. We knew that there would be a bit of a learning curve with the users, and also on our end where we can make improvements to just guide users to either use lime groves, and also we can look at where there's mandatory parking zones kind of based on feedback that we're hearing. And so the team has been responding to that feedback that we're hearing, and also I know they're working on kind of a communications campaign too, to help people just understand how to be kind of a courteous user. So Valerie, is there anything more to share there? A high level.
You covered a lot there, and this is Valerie Watson, Deputy Director. I appreciate feedback from our community members like Patricia's tonight. It helps us understand what neighborhoods are experiencing, so that we can then work with Lime through their agreement with the city to make iterative changes to the program. So in addition to that safety and courtesy messaging campaign that we're going to be working on and launching hopefully in the next few months, we can also work with Lime for them to provide in-app messages to their users as well. So I think we are finding that folks are just maybe a little confused about the best place to park them when they end their rides. And that's something we can continue to work on and raise with Lime.
Great. And in the meantime, should citizens just use Inquire Boulder to send any suggestions or input or that sort of thing on scooters?
That's right. The most direct way to get an improperly parked scooter addressed is to report it to Lime directly, and that information's on our website. But we recognize that community members want to make sure that the city is also aware of these issues. So Inquire Boulder is the second stop if you're a community member and want to report an issue that you've experienced.
Okay, great, thanks. And then sorry to dominate this, but I thought also on the vegetation one, that was an interesting suggestion. Is there any I don't know, response on that? Like, is there a way?
I thought that was a really good point. Just kind of, we're actually already in the mode of, I'm sure you've seen messaging around the upcoming snow season. The team's preparing for just our winter ahead. And I think it's good feedback for us to think about. Is there an opportunity for us to also get messaging out there around how folks can be a good neighbor and kind of clear the way? I wrote down a lot of what she said. So I'll talk about that with our communications team and see where there's opportunities there.
If I could chime in really quickly on that, we had, and I think you're correct to tie it to some of the messaging and awareness about the upcoming snow season. But a few years ago, we were talking, might have been with the PAC, the Pedestrian Advocacy Committee, Action Committee, about developing, I think it was Minneapolis, that had door hangers, the kind of cardboard things you can stick on someone's doorknob. Instead of sending code enforcement when someone complains about failure to clear a sidewalk, that a neighbor could just stick a door hanger on and say, hey, here's a reminder, you're responsible for doing this. And it seems like something we had talked about but never actualized, having a standard, Boulder, City of Boulder sort of messaging or door hanger design, but it could be similar kind of obstructions of sidewalks from vegetation and snow.
Great. That's good to know. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah, it's good
I do
discussion.
think it was before your time, Natalie.
Well, I actually remember it, like, I think I was here just in a different role, and I remember some conversations about that.
And I was going to flag, I think sometime soon we're going to talk about snow and ice removal strategies as a matter as a item at tab.
That's right. I
coming
believe
months.
it's actually next month. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be an opportunity for us to
Mhm.
get into further detail about the smaller paths around town that Chuck flagged.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool. With that, excellent discussion, everyone. We can move on to agenda item 5, which is a concept plan check-in on 5675 Arapahoe Avenue, LUR 2023-00036. We have some people from planning and development with us tonight. Natalie, do you want to introduce your colleagues?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Hi, Chandler. Thanks for being here. So Chandler's going to take this item, and I think he's ready to go.
Yeah. And we do have the applicant team. I know they're planning on attending. Meredith, I'm not sure if you saw my email with their names or if they're online yet, but just want to make sure that they can be promoted to panelists at some point so they can speak.
Yeah, Veronica, I think it's Fear and Peers, JVA, Oz. Who else are we missing?
If you can forward me that email, Natalie or Meredith, I can look out for them.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's still in presenter mode, but it's up.
Okay. Are you seeing the presentation or the presentation with notes?
Perfect.
Okay. Oops. So yes, thank you everybody on the Transportation Advisory Board. Here tonight to talk about 5675 Arapahoe. This is a site review application. It did go through concept review prior, and that's when it was referred by City Council. The subject property is located less than a quarter mile east of the 55th Street and Arapahoe Avenue intersection on the north side of Arapahoe, near the eastern edge of the city and within the IG zone district. The site is roughly 9.5 acres in size and is currently vacant. City records indicate that the property was annexed in 1987. So as I mentioned before, the project is currently in site review. The proposal is for 3 new life sciences buildings, really 2 life sciences buildings and an amenity building, totaling roughly 413,000 square feet. The current proposal, they are not asking for a parking reduction, so they're meeting City of Boulder parking requirements. It's a mix of surface parking and underground parking. In terms of the transportation system adjacent to the site, the project is located within a quarter mile of 3 RTD transit routes, the Jump, the 206, and the 208. There are 2 bus stops that serve the Jump route adjacent to the site at the 5700 block of Arapahoe Avenue. There are 4 bus stops serving routes 206 and 208 located at 55th and Arapahoe. 255th and Arapahoe stops serve northbound and southbound traffic from the 206, and the other 2 stops serve eastbound and westbound traffic for the 208. There's currently a 5-foot wide unprotected bike lane on both sides of the street from 55th to 75th. And from Foothills to 55th on the north side, there's a 12-foot multi-use path, and on the south side, the multi-use path is incomplete. This image here is from the Transportation Master Plan showing proposed connections. So as you can see, there are existing on-street paths, which I just mentioned, and proposed off-street paths on nearby properties and kind of oddly along the railroad adjacent to the site, but no connections in the TMP go through the site.
Can I interrupt really quick? I know that's kind of
Yeah.
against the where we're
Sure.
on that map. Are there connections shown on the low stress walk and bike network here?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you. I'll check.
Okay. So the review process, This went through concept plan in 2022. It was referred to TAB by City Council. They did not really provide much direction in terms of what they wanted feedback on. The applicant came in for site review earlier this year. They're currently in the second round of review. So for TAB recommendation and feedback, what we're looking for tonight is feedback on access and connectivity to existing multimodal system, including the connection of the building to Arapahoe Ave and multimodal and pedestrian circulation, and then overall alignment of the project with the transportation goals of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan and the Transportation Master Plan. Ultimately, this will be a staff level decision with subject to planning board call up. So key issue number 1 for tonight is, does the proposal provide adequate access and connectivity to the existing multimodal system, including connection of the building to Arapahoe Avenue, as well as existing multimodal and pedestrian facilities? This image here is just an image of the site plan, and hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the TAB application packet that they provided. They're showing a variety of kind of soft pedestrian paths, and then some hardscape bicycle and pedestrian paths, as well as vehicular circulation within the site. The campus will have an entrance along Arapahoe Avenue. The bike path is connected to help facilitate alternate modes of transit from the multi-use path along Arapahoe Avenue to the site's secured bike parking areas. And a pedestrian trail system is also planned through the site to connect the amenity and office buildings. Key issue number 2 is the proposed project generally consistent with the transportation goals of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan and the Transportation Master Plan? As I mentioned in the memo, staff finds generally that it's consistent with the transportation goals. The site does have some constraints in terms of connectivity. There is a high functioning wetlands at the very front of the site, which precludes development being pushed up towards Arapahoe Avenue. So the site's kind of, or the project is kind of required to be set back a good amount. But all things considered, staff finds that they've done a pretty good job of addressing the Boulder Valley Comp Plan and Transportation Master Plan goals. Specifically reduction of single occupancy auto trips, integrated transportation demand management, transportation impacts mitigated, low stress walk and bike network, and reduction. Sorry, there's some redundancy in the policies in the TMP and the BVCP. Okay. That's the end of my slideshow. I will stop share. I'm happy to answer any questions. And hopefully the applicant is here and they can also answer some questions as well.
Thank you, Chandler. Do any TAB members have any clarifying questions? We'll do clarifying questions first. Tila?
Thanks, Alex. I was curious because of the location of the wetlands here on this site, and then the intention to include subterranean parking. Can you speak to, like, if there are any complicating factors that that the builder's anticipating because of putting below grade parking in an area that seems to be already collecting water?
Yeah, I mean, the city has, strict wetland regulations with a buffer in terms of development around the wetlands. So they're outside of the buffer in terms of the wetlands. The site is also subject to floodplain, but a previous development basically regraded and kind of elevated the building part of the site so that it's out of the floodplain. This came up in planning board as well at the concept review, and yeah, they're required to meet all of our floodplain regulations and all of our wetland regulations, but they've been taking that into consideration since concept review. So I don't think that anything unexpected is likely to occur here.
Okay, thank you. And you noted that the developer's not asking for a reduction, a parking reduction, and that's kind of unusual these days. Why do we think that there's so much parking required for this site? What is different about this than what we've seen? in other recent developments in the area. In particular, it's pretty transit rich for what we're planning and even what's already there.
Yeah, I mean, I can defer to the applicant in terms of why they feel like they need all that parking. I mean, ultimately, the city has fairly high parking requirements in the IG zone. We require 1 space per 400 square feet of floor area. So it's really up to the applicant whether they decide they want to pay for all that parking and meet the parking requirements or ask for a parking reduction. I'll probably defer to the applicant in terms of why they decided that they need all of that parking instead of asking for a reduction. But we can't really require them to ask for a reduction, unfortunately.
Sure, but I'd be curious to hear from them why they need all that parking.
Looks like we have some raised hands.
Looks like Joe has his hand raised.
Okay, Joe, could you let me know if you're able to speak?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure, thank you. Joe Anastasi, Oz Architecture, on behalf of our client. We did explore this in detail. The client, analyzed it from a number of perspectives, from leasing, potential tenants, marketability, and with that, determined that the 2.5 per thousand at 1 per 400 square feet is the best ratio for them to be successful on the leasing and marketability side with the tenants. Now, if they need to reduce that, if that's a suggestion, I think they're willing to sort of reduce that as well a little bit and hopefully still be successful. And also they are providing additional, increased pedestrian, bike connectivity, increased bicycle parking, and some other means as well in lieu of that. But at least from the leasing side, that's kind of deriving the overall parking ratio at this point.
Has there been any change in that kind of analysis since COVID?
There has been, yes, they ran that analysis this week as well. In the life science standpoint, some of the research tech, they are a little bit more office focused within the building, and that occupancy a little bit more demanding than a more of a hybrid work from home type model. And so that's what they're seeing in the tenants that they are talking to.
Okay. My last sort of, I don't know if I'm not sure if it's a clarification question or whatever, but I am looking at the low stress walk and bike network. And to be fair, the maps are kind of not very fine grained, but to me, it looks like at the northern end of this site on our low stress walk and bike network, it is a proposed multi-use path to be built. And so when these things, when these parcels develop is when we try to enhance those. Can I get a little more clarification from staff
Yeah,
that this is not there?
Yeah, I can try to answer that. So there
Thanks.
was some pretty weird stuff related to the TMP. I mean, I'm assuming that the low stress walk and bike network plan gets incorporated into the transportation master plan. Is that correct? Does anyone know?
That's my understanding, yes.
Right.
That's
So
part of the TMP.
yeah, so there was a connection shown that basically went across the direct middle of this site that kind of dead ended on the other property. And initially we told the applicant that they had to provide that connection. We did a bunch of research internally and realized that that connection was basically a holdover that was supposed to be removed during the adoption of the East Boulder subcommunity plan and hadn't been removed. So it was showing up on the TMP originally, and we spoke with GIS, we spoke with long range planning about the East Boulder subcommunity plan, and they verified that the path that was shown going into this site was actually intended to be removed. So they have updated the transportation master plan GIS layer to remove that path. That's probably an oversight on our part to not realize that it was also in the low stress walk and bike network connections plan. But that was basically an error on staff's part that was still there. That was supposed to be removed.
Well, it sounds to me we have now a conflict between the East Boulder subcommunity plan and the TMP.
Well,
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead,
so-
Natalie. I was hoping you'd weigh in. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be interesting to have Brad here. But my perspective, I think, is that as the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, plans like that and that one is adopted by council and updates. So just like, TVAP 2 is happening right now and you all have been involved in that, and that updates what is currently in the TMP Connections Plan. And so if you go and look at the TMP Connections Plan and we haven't made those changes yet, then they look like they're in conflict. But whatever the most kind of relevant or updated planning document should be the thing that's kind of taking precedent over and should be consistent with our connections plan. And it is kind of a clerical error if our connections plan isn't consistent with those things. But we should be updating it essentially as those types of plans get updated, like East Boulder Subcommunity or TVAP 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you say is like the most relevant, meaning like sort of the more fine-grained, localized plan should take precedence. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and what we've updated. So, in the 2019, we updated the TMP Connections Plan when we updated the TMP. But since then, we've done other planning that's updated the TMP Connections Plan. And so it needs to be, essentially consistent with those other planning process updates.
Okay. I am failing to find the sentence in the memo because I don't quite remember where it was. But I believe that there was a reference to an adjacent parcel, I think to the east, I think is what I remember them saying. But anyway, an adjacent parcel was going to build a connection to the Boulder Creek path. And I thought that maybe was the wrong name, with the wrong path name. It struck me as strange that this applicant is saying, well, my next door neighbor is going to build a connection and we're going to let bikes through there, but we're not going to actually plan a connection on our site plan. Any response to that?
I mean, ultimately through site review, we're only really able to require connections that are shown in adopted transportation plans.
Okay, well, we have a connection shown in adoption transportation plan. That's kind of my point right now.
What I think what Natalie was trying to explain and what we determined as staff is that the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan takes precedence, and connections that are updated or adopted through that plan inform the transportation master plan and the low stress walk and bike network. And so with the adoption of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, the connection that was shown through this site is no longer there. So we do not have the ability.
Actually, through the adoption of the plan, it was still there. What you're telling me is through a subsequent modification by staff, now it's not there. It was considered a clerical error and got removed.
No, it was removed in the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, and it was a clerical error that it wasn't removed immediately from the Transportation Master Plan.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, I'll let someone else ask questions now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying, like, we did, this was a big issue that we talked about, and it's not like we didn't want them to provide a connection. It was really, we spoke with the city attorney's office, we spoke with transportation staff, we spoke with engineering staff, long range staff, and everyone said, yeah, that connection should not be there anymore. That was taken out of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. So we had no stick to make them provide a connection to the site.
Thanks for that. My main question, parallel to Tila, is about, we're so used to hearing from council members and planning board members how often parking reductions are allowed, encouraged, and they say we always give them out. So to hear that an applicant in 2023 doesn't want a reduction when a lot of boards and commissions, and we'll get to it later tonight, are talking about how our parking minimums are higher than citywide we need. Do any other tab members have any questions they'd like to ask?
I don't have a question, but I also feel, I guess, sort of puzzled and interested in yeah, that it feels unusual that the proposal's not seeking a parking reduction, and like maybe there's a good reason for that, but it just feels unusual. And so I heard the response was there was an economic analysis, and that's the result. So I guess I'm not sure where else to go with it. But so I guess that's just a comment. I don't have anything else.
Attorney Becky, have any questions? Okay. Anyone from TAB have any kind of tricky without a question from council? Is there anything that any TAB members would like to say to get into our records or encourage staff to pass along to council?
Okay, Alex, can I just sort of like point of order on this? The language, I guess I'm not even sure what we're being invited to do here because I lost it, but it says no action or recommendation is requested for TAB. So does anybody want to hear from us, or like what's being requested?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tricky when council refers something. We're trying to help council to realize that it puts us in an awkward position when they just say, yes, let's refer it to TAB, but they don't give any direct feedback or kind of direction in terms of what they want you guys to comment on. So that's why the two key issues are kind of the boilerplate key issues. I mean, any feedback that you provide, I will include in the staff memo to the planning board, and the applicant, will provide a response to it if nothing else. So it's fairly open-ended, but yeah, I mean, in general, kind of your feelings on the project's consistency with the TMP and with the comp plans, transportation policies, and just kind of overall feedback on the site's connectivity and kind of transportation amenities.
Okay, so open mic. I'll just take the chance to say, and sorry, this is not what you were expecting, but I guess you did say open mic more or less. My words, not yours. But if it's awkward, I would suggest next time when council refers something to staff, that when there's a chance to ask for clarification from council regarding what do you want from TAB, that would really help us here, and I would think be a pretty easy thing to address in the moment. And I agree, if it's like, well, what are we doing here? But so let's ask. I think that's because this has come up in other cases too, where council maybe provides direction and the clarity is not sought as far as like, or established, like, okay, like what's the plan? So I would just encourage the next time council ask for TAB's feedback, that in the moment, just make sure we get the question framed for us properly.
Absolutely.
I don't have anything. Thanks. And thanks, Shannon. This is helpful. So I don't have anything else on the project.
Well said, Ryan. Tila?
Thank you. I would like to register encouragement, I suppose, for the applicant to seek a parking reduction at this site. As I mentioned, it is pretty transit rich. We're talking 6 bus stops within a stone's throw. It's located within a quarter mile of the Jump, 206, 208. It's also close to Foothills Parkway, Highway 157, and US 36 that have bus service. We have expanded sort of the capacity for Lime scooters. We've been talking a long time about how this area is not very rich in sort of daytime destinations for office workers, and we're working on that. We're trying to discourage them from driving their cars once they do arrive at the site for short meetings or close nearby trips. I'm not seeing a whole lot of detail in the TDM portions of this application that are giving real priority or emphasis on alternate micromobility potential. I think that I hear you saying that there was and I'm still looking at the low stress walk and bike networks. This is the second point here. So I see the pathway that you're talking about, staff, that was showing a connection in the middle of the site, but it's not quite clear to me how long the site it looks like there's a connection maybe along the railroad on the northern edge of this property as well. And that, as I understand it, is an existing desire line or intended multi-use path connection. Can staff speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, that one's tricky because it's in railroad right of way, right? And the only time that we can really require these paths is when a property owner comes in for a redevelopment proposal or a development proposal. So
you're saying that pathway on the northern end is actually not on this property?
it's not on this property, and it's also just kind of a very very long range type of connection. I mean,
we do it when we can.
yeah, exactly.
I seem to recall that there was a mix of bike parking, both covered and uncovered, and I think maybe that was the temporary versus longer term bike parking. And again, with an eye to trying to encourage alternate modes of transportation for people who are on the site, even only during the daytime and even only short term. The difference between covered parking, and I'm not talking about like secure parking, but just to not have rain and snow dumped on your bike. I could imagine employees and regular workers there leaving a bike on site for their own personal use while on site, and the difference between having it covered and uncovered is pretty phenomenal. So I would encourage yes, secure bike parking, but also just sort of covered parking and more comfortable parking for bikes and micromobility. Curious whether there's a lot of talk about added pedestrian pathways, and there's some bike circulation plan on this, but how that interacts with Arapahoe Avenue, it appears that you're planning to incorporate with the multi-use path, and so that would I think mean a raised crossing so that the multi-use path doesn't dip at this intersection. It might be too early to weigh in on that, or it might be too fine-grained a detail, but I would encourage any connection with the multi-use path that's on Arapahoe Avenue to remain at grade, so that a rider on or a user of the multi-use path doesn't have to dip, and someone crossing the multi-use path, a driver or a cyclist, has to encounter some kind of change in elevation. And I think that's about all that I have at the moment. It looks like a lot of the pedestrian and bicycle facilities are just basically in and out of Arapahoe and not really connecting to neighboring parcels. That's probably just the nature of the beast here, but to the extent we can encourage flexibility and openness, maybe in the landscaping plan or the grading, so that as adjacent parcels develop, it will be easier and seamless and relatively not have to undo any work to connect to those parcels to create some alternate connectivity away from Arapahoe Avenue, which we know is kind of a hostile walking and biking environment. I would encourage that. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tila. I think the one thing I'd like to flag is that we're very publicly spending hundreds of millions of dollars on transit investments along this corridor. And so it's a little disappointing because it kind of feels like either the applicant isn't aware of that upcoming opportunity to be less car dependent, or we've overestimated the market demand for transit along this corridor. There seems to be a little bit of we're as a region, sub-region, we're spending hundreds of millions on this corridor to cut back on in commuters, and at a place that'll office people, we're having no parking reductions. Something seems kind of off there. Tila.
Sorry, I forgot I have one other item on this, and that is, as an empty lot, of course, this parcel is generating 0 vehicle trips right now, which is a little unfair to like compare it to what they're anticipating for daily demand, but it cannot possibly be said, in my opinion, that this development will reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. So I think that lends a little bit more credence to saying we need stronger transportation demand management on this site than we might otherwise be expecting or anticipating. So again, just encouraging the applicant to really rethink and I think strengthen their claims on SOV diminishment and transportation demand management, and all that is tied with the parking allocation. Thank you.
Anyone else from TAB? Ryan?
Alex, I'm sorry.
Please.
Can I do one more?
Yeah.
I just thought of something. So this is also not for the applicant so much as for, I guess, for council to think about, maybe planning board. I don't know what's in the economic calculation of that, the parking, like this is good for the, makes sense from the investment standpoint. But intuitively, I think that there are probably a lot of assumptions and calculations that are based on like what's the future market of Boulder for resale value and whatnot. And so that feels to me related to the types of policy that our city council is pursuing. If we are sending a signal that we're going in a firm direction of creating a true multimodal system in which transit and safe streets to walk and bike on are co-equal with cars, that would be sending us, a signal to developers that that's the kind of place that's going to be of the highest value, the kind of place that is building for that kind of a footprint and use is going to have the highest value. So to me, that's a statement for council and for the planning board, and to say to some extent the city maybe is not sending the right economic incentives if a developer building a state-of-the-art facility in what we think of as a transit-rich area on a network of multi-use paths is looking at the investment fundamentals, is not thinking that this is any, this needs any parking reduction. We're not sending the right signals as a city. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Ryan. I want to try a straw poll of TAB members. Who all would think it'd be fair to say that the application is not consistent with our TMP goals? Just me and Tila.
I don't have enough to say that. I feel a little not sure about it, but I don't have enough to say that it's conflict.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of struggle because on the one hand, there's like a better scenario I could envision, but I feel like also that reaching the TMP goals is constrained by other policies we have in place that lead to the development being as it is. And so it's a bit hard to say, that the development, I don't think it's development a problem so much as like there's a series of other issues and regulations that require things to be done a certain way that make it difficult to reach our TMP goals. So I can't, I feel like there's not much that can be done for the development to address that since the problem lies elsewhere. That's kind of my feeling.
Okay, well said. And I think we'll have, so the feedback for council in terms of the proposal, we won't have anything specific, but the issues that you outlined, Becky, those are things that we're actively working on. And so I think that helps motivate some of the other initiatives that this board identified in our past retreat.
I think in particular, our parking policy is so outdated. Just the number of parking spaces we were assuming are required are sort of based on old thinking that we were hoping to undo with our, latest and next to latest TMP updates. And that means sort of more aggressive TDM, more aggressive reductions in single occupancy vehicle. And that means more aggressive reductions in the ability for people to drive and park their single occupancy vehicles. So the fact that this development is playing along by the old rules means it is not progressive enough in the direction we were hoping to guide the city's growth and change and the TMP. That's why I think it's not consistent with our TMP goals.
Sounds like a great thing to say to council as we try to flag the parking code reform. So let's try to remember this one. Training.
Do we want to have someone from TAB come to planning board when this is discussed so that somebody who was here for this discussion is able to speak to some of the deliberation at planning board or at council?
You can. So as of now, this it's a call up item. So really it's a staff level approval, and then planning board has the ability to either call it up for a public hearing or not. And if they call it up for a public hearing, they basically have to make a finding, or somebody has to kind of give a reason why they feel like it's not consistent with the site review criteria. So if they don't want to call it up, then there's not really an opportunity to speak to planning board about it. And if they do, then there's a public hearing. I honestly don't know the policy about kind of having advisory board members comment on applications at public hearings for call up. So I can't really advise you one way or the other. I'd say you could come, but
Yeah,
there's
so
a
it
chance
wouldn't,
that
it
you
wouldn't
might not get.
necessarily be for TAB to speak affirmatively about it, but to be available to answer questions. And if we're too late, unless planning board decides to hear our input, to make any input, then I question Ryan's, or I second Ryan's question right from the beginning. Like, what are you asking of us and why? It seems pointless to invite us to give input if that input doesn't even need to be recorded or reflected upon or debated or anything.
Chandler, the things that we said.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll just, sorry, I was just gonna say, I do want to say that your input definitely gets input into the packet that goes forward to planning board, right? Chandler, can you confirm? Yeah. So
I'll summarize all the input that is received tonight.
And so I think it's just a question of, because this still really is kind of new process for the departments and for the city and council. And so I think if it does get called up at planning board, I imagine there would be an opportunity for somebody from TAB to be present and answer questions. That's certainly something that we can do to let them know that you're there if they call it up and have a public hearing. I think that makes, that would be appropriate and kind of fits into process that we've done in the past. So I just wanted to offer that clarity, because I do think while we are still kind of struggling with this process where council recommends these things to come to other boards, because it feels just still a little bit unstructured for us and a little vague. They are hearing your input, and planning board is too. So I think we just haven't totally dialed it in yet.
I appreciate that, Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just for curiosity's sake, what's the date?
We don't have one yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I
Okay.
request an email to TAB when that date becomes known?
Yeah.
In case one or more of us is interested in attending and being available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Trini?
Thank you. So as a suggestion in thinking about, all of our goals and long term, and I know this may sound like something completely out there, but these infrastructures do exist in more progressive cities. So could there be any consideration to allocating some of this parking to bikes? So we could have that as something to tap into if the growth goes as planned?
I mean, I would defer to the applicant. Yeah.
It's just a thought. It's just a thought. I think that, I want to believe that we will need more bike parking than car parking.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would love it if our parking requirements went down and our bike parking requirements went up. But right now I'm just kind of, we're constrained by the regulations that are in place. So it's really up to the applicant if they want to reduce the parking and increase bike parking. If they're meeting all the code stuff, we can't really tell them to add more bike parking and take away car parking, unfortunately.
Well, at least then I second what Tila said about making sure that there's protected bike parking for the people that are working and need that. But thank you.
Good suggestion. So it sounds like, Chandler, you'll have individual feedback from us, no action by the board when it comes to reporting back to planning board. And then it sounds like there's some shared confusion / suggestions for city council when they do this in the future.
Yeah.
I know when we have questions like, do you agree with this, the proposed changes to the connections plan? Like that's something for us to directly react to. I think in the past, we've typically had something to react to, and that's helped frame our conversation. So if they can be a little more explicit at what the ask is, I think for your sake, more than ours, yeah, benefit us all.
Yeah. And
Right.
for what it's worth, we're trying to get it so that like it's also kind of awkward when projects aren't required to come to TAB until they're already in site review, right? So they've already spent a bunch of money on final designs, and you know they're in the actual process of seeking an approval. They've been through 2 rounds of staff review, and then we're bringing them to you guys as an advisory board. What we're trying to do is get it so that if it's referred in concept review, that they're required to come to TAB before they submit for site review, so that they have the ability to, you know, take all this feedback and put it into their first round of plans that they're submitting for review, as opposed to trying to change it like midstream. So anyways, that's something we've been discussing internally as staff as well, and that we're going to try to formalize shortly here.
Great. Ryan, final thought?
Yeah, sorry to drag this on, but I just wanted to be really crisp with the executive summary for city council, because this may just go into the minutes and that's it. And it's that I think there's I would say a finding here that the 5 members of TAB, I think all 5 of us felt a little surprised that in late 2023, we have a developer building a state-of-the-art project, not even asking for car parking reductions. And through some discussion, we have determined that we do not have, city policy is not yet providing incentives and encouragement sufficient to drive developers to do that. And I just think we should be, we talked about parking and that's fine, but like the headline is, our city policy is not driving that type of behavior. And we're a little bit flummoxed that that's still happening. So I hope that's somehow in the minutes. That's all.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for joining us tonight, Chandler, and to the applicants and the rest of the team working on this.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well. I think that includes agenda item 5. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is our semi-annual update on Vision Zero crash data presented by Devin Jocelyn.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate the introduction. Let me pull up my presentation. Okay, well, good evening, TAB. My name is Devin Jocelyn. I'm the city's principal traffic engineer, and I'm here tonight to provide an update on crash trends and Vision Zero action plan implementation. Tonight, I'll walk through 4 main things. I'll first provide a severe crash summary. I want to review the 2023 severe crash trends to date. I'll also provide an update and some insights on e-bike crash trends. And this provides e-bike crash trends dating back to 2016. And then I'll provide an update on action plan implementation. There's a lot of exciting things going on with that are already underway that I want to share with you. And finally, I'll identify next steps for future TAB updates. So I wanted to start with a summary of total crashes that have occurred this year. And note that this slide includes all crashes that have occurred citywide from January through August 2023. And these include property damage only crashes, as well as crashes that have occurred on private property. There have been 1,080 total crashes citywide year-to-date through August 2023. Compared to the same period in 2022, total crashes in 2023 are down 97. The reduction of 97 total crashes in 2023 compared to this same time period in 2022 corresponds to an 8% decrease in total crashes. Even though the primary focus of this update is on severe crashes, it is important to understand also how total crashes are tracking this year compared to prior years. This gives a sense of the bigger picture and illustrates how we are tracking on the Vision Zero objective of reducing other types of crashes. Any crash, whether injuries occur or not, has costs to society and can disrupt our lives. Understanding total crash numbers also helps give context to the percentage of total crashes that result in serious injuries or fatalities. And just as a refresher, in Boulder, we call severe crashes those that result in serious injuries or fatalities. I want to note here also on this slide some of the longer term trends that we've seen relative to total crashes in the city. Total crashes have been decreasing since reaching a high of 3,074 total crashes in 2016. There were 1,788 total crashes in 2022, representing a 42% decrease in total crashes in that time period. So I'll move now to providing an update of severe crashes. And these next few slides will run through a lot of the data and trends that we've seen this year relative to severe crashes. And again, severe crashes are those that include serious injury or a fatality. This slide compares the monthly severe crashes that occurred in 2022 to 2023. Note that the severe crash data only includes severe crashes that occurred on public streets, and this excludes any severe crashes that may have occurred on private property. So far this year, there have been 40 severe crashes, 3 fatal, and 37 serious injury, and that's citywide year to date through August 2023. Compared to the same period in 2022, fatal crashes in 2023 are up 3, and serious injury crashes are up 6. You'll see that the number of severe crashes varies from month to month and is quite frankly hard to predict. Therefore, it is difficult to estimate how 2023 severe crash totals by year's end will compare to 2022. In 2023, the number of severe crashes per month has ranged from 3 to 8. If this pattern were to hold, 2023 would end up relatively comparable, albeit perhaps slightly higher than 2022, but likely still lower than pre-pandemic years, which experienced more than 60 severe crashes per year on average. This slide shows how severe crashes are occurring by mode, and we see that most severe crashes involve a vehicle with another vehicle, although severe crashes that involve a vehicle with either a bicyclist or pedestrian are each very similar in number. And the most common severe crash types that occur include crashes involving pedestrians, bicyclists, fixed objects, right angle crashes, and approach turn crashes. This slide shows the location of severe crashes this year by street classification. So far in 2023, over 75% of severe crashes have occurred on either a principal arterial or minor arterial. And you'll recall from the Safe Streets Boulder report, the finding that 67% of severe crashes occurred on an arterial roadway for the period between 2018 and 2020. So we're actually seeing even a slight increase so far this year, that even more crashes are occurring on arterial roadways than we've seen in the past. And you can see that collector and local streets taken together represent 7% of severe crashes, while sidewalks and multi-use paths together represent 6% of severe crashes. This slide shows the location along the transportation system where severe crashes are occurring. And you'll see that most severe crashes occur at either signalized intersections or along roadway or multi-use path segments. This slide shows the age range of the at-fault driver or roadway user. And you'll note that that varies, but most range from 20 to 29 or 30 to 49. This slide shows the age range of all parties involved in severe crashes. You can see that this is distributed mostly across three age ranges, spanning from 20 to 64. And what I want to highlight here is that trends to date in 2023 indicate that fewer youth and older adults have been involved in severe crashes compared to the trends we saw noted in the Safe Streets report for the period from 2018 through 2020. I want to transition here and discuss briefly the 3 fatal crashes that have occurred within the city to date. You'll see the dates and some high-level information about those crashes listed here on this slide. I'll note that the investigations for the 2 fatal crashes that occurred in August are still ongoing, so I won't speak to specific details of those tonight. But I do want to acknowledge the 3 people who lost their lives in these 3 fatal crashes this year. And just to remind everyone that these people are not just numbers. They are our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, and friends. And they've been killed in the course of the everyday act of moving from place to place. The impact on their families, friends, and communities is immense and permanent. Let's take a moment to remember the lives of Dusanka Zupansky, 65, Owen Eldridge, 19, and Brett Christensen, 45. I want to transition to talk about some e-bike crash data. This was compiled by staff in response to a request from City Council, and we shared an e-bike safety update with City Council in an information packet at the October 5th, 2023 Council meeting. But I thought it would be important to reiterate some of that information here tonight at the TAB meeting. For those that are interested that may be listening in tonight, the full e-bike safety memo can be found on the City Council website. If you look at the agenda for October 5th, the memo is available there. So I'll walk through this table, and you'll see, first of all, that it does include data from the period 2016 through 2023, and the data that we had in 2023 goes up to mid-August 2023. And you'll see the left column indicates kind of the severity of crashes ranging from fatal, serious injury, minor injury, possible injury, and property damage only. And then the columns to the right indicate the number of crashes within those severities by year. So you'll see down on the lower right corner of the table that there have been 32 total e-bike involved crashes that have been reported since 2016. And again, this is all citywide crashes. And that in 2016 through 2022, the number of e-bike crashes each year ranged from 1 to 6. But so far in 2023, there have been 10 e-bike related crashes. So 10 of the 32 for the period from 2016 to 2023 year to date have occurred this year in 2023. We'll see in the top rows of the table, those show that there have been no fatal crashes involving e-bikes during the time period analyzed. There have been 8 serious injury crashes and 15 minor injury crashes. There have also been 7 possible injury and 2 property only damage crashes. The bottom row at the the bottom row, excuse me, shows the percentage of e-bike crashes as compared to crashes involving all bicycles. This percentage has ranged from 0.5% to 4.7% for the years 2016 through 2022. But you can see that so far this year, e-bike crashes relative to all bike crashes are at 20.8% based on the data reported so far in 2023. What I also want to point out here is that staff looked closely at where these e-bike crashes were occurring, and we did not see any correlation between crash location and proximity to schools. And it's really too early to draw other conclusions about the data and recent trends. This is something staff will continue to monitor as new data becomes available. This slide provides a summary of e-bike related crashes by mode involved. And we see that over 80% of e-bike crashes that have been reported since 2016 have involved an e-bike with a vehicle. Only 2 crashes have involved an e-bike and another bike. 0 crashes have involved an e-bike and a pedestrian. This slide shows the age range of all parties involved in e-bike crashes. And you'll see that no e-bike crashes dating back to 2016 have involved persons under the age of 15. Most people involved in e-bike crashes are between the ages of 20 to 64, with an about equal split between those age ranges respectively. So I'll transition away now from the crash data trends and give you an update on Vision Zero Action Plan implementation. And just keep in mind again that the Vision Zero Action Plan was finalized earlier this year in May, and that the plan covers a 5-year time period from 2023 through 2027. And this is just a reminder for all those listening that the Vision Zero Action Plan categorized actions into 4 main groups. The first is to implement and improve engineering solutions. This includes things like updating our signal practices, reviewing and implementing more pavement markings and signing, taking a closer look at right turn slip lanes, and reviewing crash data and pursuing grants to receive funding to do projects within the plan. This first category included the bulk of the actions within the plan, 9 total actions, although that 9 included many sub-actions as well, broken out in the table that you'll see on the next slide. The second category was to pair engineering with education and enforcement. The third category was to improve internal Vision Zero practices. And the fourth category was to improve Vision Zero data and transparency. What I'll say here is that this table summarizes the action plan progress to date. And to date, staff has initiated efforts on 26 of 34 actions. The plan identified 2 actions for implementation in 2023. Other actions were identified as either ongoing or to be completed within the 2024 through 2027 timeframe. And just as another reminder as well, the overall structure of actions within the plan focuses first on updating key practices, then implementing those practices first across the high-risk network, then across the remainder of the transportation systems. So many of these actions are dependent on a prior action being completed. This table again shows the status of the actions. Green indicates that an action is on track to be completed or has been completed. Gold indicates an action is underway but less than 50% completed. Gray indicates an action has not been started. And you'll see that most of the actions that haven't been started are identified for future years, or again, they may be dependent on another action being completed in a prior year. And I would say that given the recent completion of the plan, things are well underway, and staff will be adding the 2024 actions into our work plans to ensure successful and timely completion of them. The next few slides will provide more details on key progress on actions within each of the 4 categories of actions identified in the plan. So you'll see here that these actions have to do a lot with signal timing changes or implementation of no right turn on red restrictions. They also have to do with implementing high priority, low cost solutions that are identified within the action plan, as well as higher cost solutions that were identified in the plan, and the work on the core arterial network. And what I'll say here is that the action plan was really instrumental in developing and formulating and justifying, documenting the basis for our Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application, which was a very sizable application that will address all the high priority, low cost solutions and higher cost solutions included in the plan. So we're really hoping that we are successful in that grant pursuit. And then relative to the Baseline Road Phase 1 CAN project, additional elements are planned to be added along the corridor later this month. These include tall curb in strategic locations, as well as additional delineators. And I'll note that on the Iris Avenue CAN project, an open house is planned to be held on October 24th at Foothill Elementary School. I talked about how the action plan informed the Safe Streets and Roads for All application that we submitted. We are expecting to hear back on whether we received the demonstration funds that we requested for a right turn slip lane design study. We are expecting to hear later this month if we received the demonstration funds, and the implementation funds that we requested, we're expecting to hear in December whether we received those funds or not. And Action 7, I know some of you on the board are involved in the work with the speed limit setting and signing practices. That project is well underway, and we plan to give TAB an update earlier next year on that project. These just show some photos of the no right turn on red prohibitions that were implemented recently at Broadway and Arapahoe, as well as Broadway and University. And these show some of the work to date on the Baseline Road Phase 1 core arterial network improvements. And these show the great work that staff has been doing to engage with the community on the Iris Avenue corridor project. Actions in this category have to do a lot with coordinating with the Boulder Police Department on crash data and various other enforcement topics. Relative to Action 11, we've been prioritizing and compiling data to support photo enforcement expansion. We have plans that are underway to add 2 additional red light running cameras next year. And we're also in the process of preparing a resolution for City Council consideration, tentatively scheduled on December 7th, that has to do with a resolution designating corridors on which we would expand automated enforcement. And relative to Action 15 in the plan, I know some members of the board were present at the ribbon cutting ceremony for the 30th Street and Colorado Avenue project that was held last week. That was just a wonderful event, and it was great to see the community come together to celebrate the opening of that project. And these are some photos from that event for any that weren't in attendance. And these are some photos of the project taken before sunrise. And they just speak to how well lit the project is, and just how great it is all times a day. And this shows a member of the board and some staff from the city, as well as other folks at the state capitol following their testimony on the photo radar or automated enforcement expansion bill earlier this year. Relative to improving Vision Zero practices, I mean, Vision Zero really is at the forefront of our work, and we actively work to participate in regional Vision Zero meetings with both Boulder County and DRCOG. Our staff, we're proud to say, attends and presents at conferences such as NACTO and the CDOT Traffic Safety Summit. And all of this is done to really learn and share knowledge and keep up to date with industry best practices. Relative to Action 18, which has to do with improving Vision Zero data and transparency, we are continuing to maintain and update the crash data dashboard. I do want to note here, though, that Boulder Police recently switched record management systems, and this has caused a momentary lag in crash data updates to the dashboard recently. And IT staff are working to code a handshake between the new system with the dashboard. But in the meantime, we will continue to pass along information about severe crashes in a timely manner. For next steps, we want to hold ourselves accountable to continuing to implement the Vision Zero action plan and reporting out on progress each year. And we'll plan to come back to the board in second quarter next year to give an update on final 2023 severe crash numbers, the results of grant awards, and more details on the status of other action items. So we had one question for the board tonight. That was, what feedback does TAB have regarding progress on Vision Zero action plan implementation? And for anyone who's interested and wants to reach out to learn more, my contact info is here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Devin. That was thorough and insanely educational as usual. I really appreciate you taking the time to honor the people that we lost and bringing the human element into this. I look forward to looking through this a little bit closer. I really like the table with all of the severe crashes and the characteristics or the factors that possibly contributed to those. This was a mixed bag of depressing news, but certainly actions that are being taken by staff that don't make it feel like a totally helpless situation. Trini?
Well, first of all, I just want to commend Devin for such a brilliant and thorough and fantastic job, because this plan, I don't know how many of you are aware, but this plan is a necessary tool to apply, for example, for the Safe Streets for All grant, and other communities can lean on Devin's work in order to apply as well. That was something that was discussed at one of the Vision Zero regional meetings. And so thank you so much, because your work is speaking for not only for our city, but other cities nearby that can benefit from that. And I have a couple of questions just regarding the data, and that's just for I just wanted to know if you knew when you were gathering the data, do you have the breakdown of how many of the people were male or female, like as far as gender?
Yes, we have that data available. I don't have it right at my fingertips, though. But perhaps before we end this discussion, we can get you some information on that.
That's awesome. And also, do you have any information whether any of these crashes were speed related, or how many of these were speed related?
That's another great question that I don't have readily available.
No, well, whenever you have it, I think I would be really interested in just seeing.
Sure.
But yeah, and well, thank you again, because yeah, we need people that work as hard as you.
You're welcome. Well, and I'll just say, relative to the speed related data, that is something that we looked at very closely, because that is a primary thing that we'll be using as a basis to justify the corridors that are selected for the automated enforcement expansion. And we're in the process of preparing a map that shows where the speed-related crashes have occurred throughout the city, and it'll show quite clearly the corridors where enforcement is most justified.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Ryan?
We're doing questions now. I have a few questions and then we'll do comments after that. Is that right?
I think they're mostly looking for feedback, but clarifying questions too. Sure.
I can do it all now. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start with questions then. Devin, thanks for this. Yeah, I also agree. It was a really nice presentation. Communicated the data really well. I appreciate all the diligence. Yeah, it's great presentation. So I have a few questions. My first question is, I guess I'm just thinking like big picture, what do I take away from this? And I think what I saw was we are improving safety outcomes, but I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of different, at the end, there's a lot of steps and actions and there's a lot of slides. So I guess, can you just, I mean, I don't know, maybe summarize it so that I, like in a simple way, are we like, yeah, how are we doing and to what do you attribute that? And like, what are the few big things that, you know, the city should look forward to happening based on that?
Yeah, great question. So certainly in terms of total crash numbers, that's an area where we have seen pretty dramatic reduction in the number of total crashes that are occurring across the city. That's where I mentioned earlier a 42% reduction in total crashes in 2022 compared to 2016. But there's been an overall downward trend in total crashes since 2016. Severe crashes are, as I mentioned, a little bit more unpredictable and can vary from year to year for various reasons. But we have, I guess in general, again, seen a decrease in severe crashes that have occurred per year since kind of that 2016, 2017 time period. Back in those years, we were experiencing about 60 severe crashes a year, and we've seemingly cut that number to, 50 or less. 2021 was 46 and 2022 was 48. So we are seeing gains as well in reducing severe crashes. And I think it's many factors at play. I think it's not just our department that can share in the credit of that, because it is such a multi-departmental approach to Vision Zero that involves certainly transportation and mobility, but also planning and development services staff and police department staff, as well as the first responders who, are the ones on the front lines responding to those crashes and providing the care that those people need in a timely and effective way to help save lives also. So I think the action plan in the big picture is just one of the many things that we can point to, but certainly, look to continue to implement actions to make progress.
Sorry to interrupt you. Okay, so just to summarize, so big takeaways: improvements are happening overall. To a lesser extent, improvements are happening with severe crashes. We attribute this to the overall kind of systems approach. That's what I take away. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'll just put in a plug too that a lot of this certainly has to do with human behavior as well, which is difficult to control and account for and accommodate on the transportation system. So I think there's just an acknowledgement as well that each road user kind of shares in the responsibility of creating a safe system for all.
Thank you. Okay, I got just a few more, so I'll try to get them in. The second one is I'm not sure if I saw the time series on crashes or serious crashes for people outside of vehicles, like pedestrians and cyclists. What does the trend look like on that? And forgive me if I missed a slide, or I don't know if you know.
I don't think we have a slide specifically speaking to pedestrian and bicyclist involved crashes. we had information that shows what percentage of severe crashes have involved bicyclists and
Okay.
pedestrians.
Is there anything you know? I mean, it's fine if not, but just like off the top of your head, like just the general story, like what's happening with bike and pedestrian crashes over time.
Yeah, over time, I think I'd have to point back to like the Safe Streets Boulder report. That certainly provided the information for a 3-year period, which is a little better time period to look at for trends than just a kind of 8.5 month or 8-month year period that was presented here tonight.
Got it. Okay, great. And then my final hard question is, so this will be the last meeting we have before there's a city council election and a new city council that's going to be figuring out their work plan. I mean, you'll have some chance to engage with them, but I'm just thinking about, so TAB is the conduit to city council on giving them advice. And what do we take from this as far as recommendations, if asked, to go forward, like from a city council level, like, so when we've got the CAN, that's a city council initiative that maybe readopted, refined, or something else. There could be other things. And I know in general, it might be awkward to tell city council how to do their business, but I guess on the other hand, that's my question to you is like, what are the political or the, high level things that could really help, assuming no constraints, the things that could really help to move this along, if you really have the wind at your back.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I certainly would welcome any other staff to weigh in as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in. Just appreciate the question, Ryan. I think really like the work that has been laid out in the action plan is the work that we know we need to do. And it will take time and resources and, money and staff to do it. And so kind of, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but, there's just a matter of we have limited resources. And so we need to constantly be juggling what is, the highest priority, where can we put our resources at any given time to be able to further the work that we have, laid out ahead of us with both CAN and the Vision Zero action plan. So I think we have kind of the guide of the work that needs to get done. And now it's just a matter of assigning resources and, bringing, like, engaging with the community and having the conversations. And that all just takes time, and we don't have limitless resources.
Okay.
And so we have to just do that in a measured way, in a strategic way, and what's going to get us kind of further as quickly as we can.
Okay, I think I heard money, and specifically money for staff would help to do more faster and bigger. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry to put you in the hot seat. Alex, I just had 2 comments I can give now, or I can wait. What do you like?
Now's the time.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you again, Deb and Natalie. I guess so. This is sort of a comment. I don't have anything on the within the scope. It's more about wider scope. And one thing I'm thinking about is, I think the way that Vision Zero is currently imagining it, it's with respect to existing. So if you think about the metaphor of like people, people crossing, you don't look at people who are swimming across a river to figure out if you need a bridge. And this is sort of the story about like what's going on the bridge. But I'm thinking about everybody who's not crossing the river, all the people who are isolated, the kids and the seniors and the others who are just not out there, like riding their bikes or walking, because Iris and whatever other arterials are just intuitively dangerous and scary. And so I guess I'm just wondering, this is a comment, is I would love to see an expansion of some consideration of that in future Vision Zero work. I'm not sure if this is a question, if I'm actually answering a question you offered, but I just think it's really, it feels good to see some of the progress that's happening, and I feel really great about that. And yet still, I know that a second grader or a 4th grader can't free range around their own home in most places in Boulder, and there's thousands of those examples. seniors don't feel like it's safe to go out on an electric trike right now. And so can we start to quantify that a little bit more about the number of people who are isolated because of the continued danger in arterials and such, despite the great progress that we're seeing, like the existing split of modes. So that's my first comment. And also colleagues might disagree with me that that's the business of the Vision Zero plan here, but that's my input. And the second thing is also sort of on scope, is as you were talking about the 3 deaths, I was thinking about all of the wider deaths in the county. And I recognize that this is the city, not the county. And yet still, most Boulderites, move pretty quickly outside of city limits. And it feels a little narrow to think about this story as only in terms of like just the city. And I don't know that there's some obvious way that we reflect the wider county story in this plan or the implementation. But it feels relevant to me that we, if you think about the daily life of a Boulderite, or the weekly, that there might be some coordination reflected here, or like some contextualization here, and like how are we doing within the overall county and a region or something like that. So anyway, you probably might need more money and staff to consider that, but those are my 2 bits of feedback. Thanks again for all this.
Yeah, I'll just say briefly to that, Ryan, that we are very tied in with the county and then the Denver Regional Council of Governments. And they have a regional Vision Zero plan, which does look a little bit more broadly about around the Denver metro area to understand what are the issues most agencies in the region are experiencing and what can be done to address those regional safety type issues. And they are often ones, along with CDOT, who are kind of the leaders in developing education campaigns and things of that nature to help address the more regional trends that we're seeing related to Vision Zero.
Training?
Well, I guess my, going back to the county and just focusing on Magnus White's death, I left our CIP tour feeling so elated. I was so happy. I was in such a good place. And then Magnus got killed a couple of days later. And every day I just think, I know the energy in the city. I know it's really challenging for me to convey to others that I know how much work is being put in and how, vibrant and, how much people really want things to change. But yet I feel that we have all this red tape. I mean, there has to be a way to cut like all these steps so we can get stuff done. And I understand there's limited budget, but yet there's things that to me are no-brainers. And I don't know how we got to this place where we have to follow all of these multiple steps to get to what we want to get done. And I think we're wasting all this time and people are getting killed in the process. And, we know what to do. We know how to do it. And we do have the budget to do certain things. So it's kind of like, well, do we really, and maybe this sounds really dumb, but, coming from someone that is not an engineer and is not in this space other than as a victim myself, does it make sense to you guys to like perhaps not have to do all of this community engagement? I mean, I'm not saying not to do it, period, but it just seems like such a long process when we know the communities, nobody's going to say, oh, we don't want to be safer. We don't want this to be implemented. I mean, I understand there's certain things that are more complicated, but in the main, I don't think anybody would object to being able to get to point A from point B safely. I mean, I just don't get that. So my comment in short is just, is there any way to cut back on all of these steps so we can actually get stuff done that we all want, and I know we do, and, to make sure that things don't continue to happen. And I don't know who that question is for or who that comment is.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, I think I hear you, and I think there's certain circumstances where we are able to, you know, certainly we kind of make our engineering decisions, and like with the no right turn on reds, right? Like obviously we had community engagement through the Visions or Action Plan process, but ultimately we're implementing no right turn on reds, and there are definitely people in the community that don't agree with that implementation tool, and we're making an engineering decision to implement that. So there are certain things where you know, you could say community engagement is more in the inform realm, but then there are other bigger conversations and projects that really are further along on that engagement spectrum with the community, where we really need to be collaborating with them and getting their input to inform any potential changes in the future. So I think it's a spectrum, and depending on what it is that we're implementing, we can be somewhere along that spectrum, but it you know, it varies from project to project.
No, and I totally appreciate that, and I see how some circumstances and some situations would be more demanding, but maybe if we could go back and do some house cleaning on just like the very basic, you know, like you said, like we're doing this, and you know, on our right hand turns, and presenting the community with data on why we're doing this instead of having to go through this whole drawn out process, but in the right circumstances, right? I mean, all I'm trying to say is that I think we need to move faster, and you know, and just cut down on whatever it is that's getting in the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Becky?
Thanks. Yeah, Trini, I kind of agree, and on the sort of process piece, and I think this ties into what Ryan was asking about too, as far as what council can do. And I think getting to a point of having less process requires, for some kinds of actions, a lot more council will and political will behind something, so that there doesn't have to be a big conversation about whether something will be safer, but rather, you know, just the conversation is just about how do we adapt it so it best works for the community. And I think until, I mean, some of you know that I'm like very supportive of policies that are more binding in terms of, you know, when we make a road safer, we invest in a certain level of safety, and it's not really a community discussion whether it's going to be, you know, whether there's going to be a protected bike lane because it's a big road. There will be, you know, it's just a question of how it's going to be designed. And I think in an ideal world, that's how it works. Like the road will get built to whatever the plans have said is the required level of safety. But I think that can't happen when council isn't like, or it's hard to happen when there's no policy that requires it and council isn't consistently behind it. And so I think until one or both of those things happen, that there ends up being a lot of like project by project, sort of seeing what is politically feasible. So that's my personal opinion on it. I think that's the same true of lots of places, and why it's just gets, yeah, why sometimes it gets slowed down. So yeah, I think council's kind of started down that path, and I hope we can see more and more of that political will from council, either in the form of a policy that says, yes, we're going to do this consistently, or that says, or at a minimum, that they stand behind the changes that, you know, aspire to the plans that we have that say, yes, we need certain things on this road to make it safe. So anyway, so definitely in agreement with you there, Trini. I had a couple other things. Yeah, thanks, echoing others. Thanks, Devin. It's a great presentation. I really appreciate you bringing it to us so we can kind of check in on all of this. Really, you know, excellent data to be able to review. So thank you. I did have one question. I don't know if you have an answer to this. So I know that there are 3 fatalities that were on city roads, and then there's one fatality that the police have in their system that happened in a parking lot. So I know that's private property. It looks like it was in the McGuckins parking lot. And I'm just wondering if you know anything about what happened there, or if there's somebody I could ask to find out what happened at that crash.
Yeah, the one, I don't want to misspeak, but that one I believe was quite sad. And I believe it was an older, I want to say woman, who I think essentially accidentally backed into or drove into a person in the parking lot. But I would need to, again, pull the report and confirm those details. So
Devin,
that's
I
just
can
from my recollection.
clarify. For that private property crash that happened in McGuckins, Devin's correct about it being an older woman, but she actually was hit by her own car. So she left the vehicle on reverse as she got back out to do something, and the car continued rolling on to her.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Yeah, thank you for that detail. Appreciate it. Answers that question. And one other question I have, I know Chuck brought it up in an email he sent to Tab as well. And something I've been wondering about is the kind of flashing yellows that are on some of our signalizing intersections. And I know, Devin, you said you can't speak to all the details of the most recent crashes in August, so I can appreciate that. But from what I know, it appears that one of those was a left, and from the table that one of them was a left-hand turning vehicle with an oncoming vehicle. And so I don't know if that was, or I think maybe the table did say it was a flashing yellow. Anyway, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess I'm just, given that we know that there's a lot of data that shows that these unprotected turns are dangerous, both like Boulder has a lot of crashes on left turns. There's FHWA data that shows that these flashing yellows are less safe than protected lefts. So I'm wondering why we have a lot of them. We have a lot of these flashing yellow lefts on arterial roads at all hours of the day. Is this something that we're looking at changing? Is it hard to change? Like, why are these things in place? If you could give me some kind of context here, that'd be really helpful.
Sure. What I'll say to that is that our current traffic signal timing practices were developed in 2018, and they were developed using research from NCHRP as well as peer cities, and then kind of adapted to Boulder. And I think when I say adapted, it's just we kind of tweaked the crash thresholds and things like that to fit our context of our street transportation system. And we have identified in the action plan that is one of the signal timing practices that we want to look at next year. So we're acknowledging that research may have changed and there could be new things to review and consider in how we implement left turn phasing at intersections.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, that's great to know. And I'm curious, like technically speaking, if you decide we're no longer going to have flashing yellows at this particular intersection or on this road or whatever it may be, how does that change happen? Like how hard is it to change how a signal works, assuming you already have assuming that flashing yellow is there? I realize there are some signalized intersections that don't have protected left, and you'd have to change the whole lighting head. Sorry, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, so how hard is it to change how the signal works?
So that's a bit of a tricky answer. What I'll say is that largely to date, our practice has been based on many factors. And those include the left turning volume, the opposing through volume, the number of crashes at the intersection, the speed of the opposing traffic, the number of lanes crossed, the number of pedestrians or bicyclists in the kind of parallel crosswalk that the left turning vehicle would be turning into. So it's more so the analysis and reviewing that data and running it through the criteria that is the time consuming part. The implementation of the left turn phasing is a change to the traffic signal controller programming. And that's a relatively straightforward thing to do.
Okay, so that last piece, yeah. So like if it was decided based on the criteria, this should be changed, it could, like, would it take, like, if all the analysis is done and it's gonna be changed, it's just like, is it a day or a week or how, like, I know it's
So
really specific, but I just don't know
yeah,
how
I
this
mean,
works.
It's some time to revisit the controller programming, and then we test the programming on what's called a bench in our signal shop, and we let it run and review that it's running correctly. And we typically do that for a week before we implement it in the field, just to assure that it's gone through its full, weekly timing plan changes and everything, and the transitions are correct and there's no hiccups in the program. So I mean, it's a little hard to put an actual like time of labor to it, but relatively straightforward once you have decided what you want to do.
Okay. Great, thank you. And I guess my kind of last, it's more of a comment on the left hand. I'm really the left hand or the left turn signaling. I'm excited that the department's going to look at it next year, and yeah, I think that it sounds to me, from what I know, like this is a relatively low cost way of potentially saving lives, and given intersections where this technology is already in place. I do hope as part of that, we're able to figure out like what the default should be. So like, instead of, well, if the default now is flashing yellow and if it meets certain criteria, then we make it protected, but rather like that if protected is safer, which research has shown for other cities, that would be the default. And then there'd have to be certain criteria met in order for the unprotected or the flashing yellow to be in place. To me, that would make sense from like a Vision Zero safety perspective, that the default is the safest thing, and then the less safe thing is requires the criteria. So that's my thinking based on the research I've seen from elsewhere, that suggests that is the safer route. But yeah, very excited for this to be looked at next year. And thank you for answering my detailed questions on it. I do appreciate it. Yeah, and I guess the last thing, just a comment for council really, which is just as they're looking at these different crash numbers, particularly with e-bikes, since that's an area of interest to them, is to think about the rates. So there weren't as many e-bikes in 2016, so there wouldn't be as many crashes. And I'm not saying that that's the only reason the numbers change, but that's certainly going to be a big reason. There are a lot more e-bikes today and a bigger percentage of the bike fleet out there. So I hope they're keeping that in mind. So thank you again for this great analysis and for bringing it to us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're clearly giving people e-bikes, but we still need to work on places for them to be ridden. Tila?
Thank you. Becky, I love how you think. I second your last point and your second to last point and probably the third to last point, but it's terrific to have you on the board. I definitely agree on the safest design should be the default, and we should be looking at that for signal timing, for road geometry, for all kinds of things. So thank you for saying that out loud and reminding us of that. Devin, I really, really want to echo what Alex said and appreciate you taking the time to name the victims and think about them and say they're not numbers. That's really important to me and a lot of other people in this space. So I appreciate you doing that tonight. My only question right now is about City Council having asked for e-bike crash numbers. And I think, as Becky pointed out, well, the stats don't feel very alarming to me. You noted that there aren't a higher incidence of crashes around schools, and I know that this is probably part of the motivating factor for council to have asked for this data in the first place. In that discussion, here's my question. In that discussion with council, was there any sort of conclusion by staff, conclusion by council about whether the hand-wringing and concern about e-bike usage and crash rates was warrants looking at more, or were they satisfied sort of with the picture that the data is giving us. I see Natalie's unmuted. She wants to jump in on this.
Well, only because I am just, my mind is spinning. And so we ended up submitting, they had a number of questions kind of around e-bike safety and things that, you know, kind of the current landscape related to e-bike safety. So that's a very broad topic in the city of Boulder. So we ended up the team put together an IP that was actually in coordination with Open Space and Mountain Parks too, given just e-bikes on trails. And that went into their packet on October 5th, so this past Thursday. So it was only an information item. We didn't have a discussion with them. It essentially kind of what led to that was if there's a desire for them to have further discussion after we shared that information with them, then they're, you know, welcome to ask for that. But we haven't heard anything since that submittal. And we were, you know, I actually didn't think about, we could have included that as an information item for you all just to have in your packets as an FYI. But now that I'm here telling you about it, it's in the October 5th packet for council. So, you know, encourage you to check that out because there was a lot of great information that the team put together for that.
Yeah, I'm just more curious, was there a response or a way to summarize any response from council about that information that you gave them?
Not yet.
Okay.
If we hear something, we can certainly share that at a future meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yes. All the children are coming out. It's late. Why aren't they in bed? Mine are in bed.
All right, anything else? Tila, that's still an old hand, looks like it. Okay, thanks again, Devin and staff. Clearly by all the interest and tap questions and ideas, there's a lot to unpack here, so really appreciate this really informative presentation.
Thank you.
Lost my agenda, but I think we're on to matters. First from staff. You're muted, Natalie.
Sorry, I just said that we do not have any matters under staff tonight.
Okay. Matters from the board. I know, Becky, you had emailed us about parking.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update on the effort around off-street parking and asking for council to put in their 2024 work plan to update the off-street parking ordinances. Just want to give you an update on that. So the initial language I shared, it's tweaked a little bit, just based on feedback to make it clearer, but the intent is the same. So far we have 17 individual board members who have signed on in support from 7 different boards. And I'm still doing a lot of outreach to boards. Mainly what I've been doing is going to their public comment if they have a meeting. In some cases, they don't have a meeting this month. And then following up via email with the individual board members when possible. In some cases, individual board members' emails are not listed online. And then following up with them again a week later to see if they'd like to sign on. So, so I think generally it's been positive, of course, via email. You only so many people responding to emails and reading emails, so that's always going to be a limitation. I think even for those people who don't sign on, it's a good opportunity to sort of put the issue in front of them as something to think about as it relates to the topic that their board is concerned with. As one example, sharing it with environmental board, I think is useful if it's not on their radar already, like it should be, because it has such huge implications for environmental issues. So I think just the exercise of getting it in front of them is good, even if not everyone signs on. There are a couple people who have expressed interest in revising the ordinances, but aren't sure about elimination of minimums, which is in our statement, which I understand. Should the item become a part of council's agenda, that will be, of course, discussed in the evolution of the ordinance. So, nobody has a hard no, though, so that's good. So I think people are either, you know, have minor concerns or just haven't responded if they aren't signed on. So, yeah, my goal is to do as much outreach as possible before the end of October. And then by the end of October, kind of whoever signed on, I'm sort of going to call it then so that there's a bit of a break during the election weeks. And then in sort of November, maybe early December, do some outreach to council members, incoming council members, as well as those who are continuing on to share the request with them. Try to get that done, you know, well before the holidays. So that's kind of my plan right now. And I mentioned this before, but if any of you have contacts on boards that you could reach out to, that's always helpful. You know, personal connections are always a good way to introduce an idea that otherwise for some folks is kind of foreign and a little wonky. So it's nice to be able to, you know, hear it from somebody you know rather than a random email. So yeah, but going well so far. So just keep chugging along.
Thanks for doing that, Becky. Really encouraging. I love it. Are there any boards you're still waiting to contact, or?
There are a few I have not reached out to. I'd say the main one, like Landmarks, and I haven't talked to. They has some pertinence to their work. The Board of Zoning Adjustment, I'm not really clear on their roles, but it sounds related. So I'm going to reach out to them. And possibly the University and Downtown Management Commissions, though I also don't know exactly the scope of what they discuss. So and then there are others I'm just in the process, like I've reached out to them once but haven't followed up yet. And you know, a lot of people respond at the follow-up point. So
okay, great. Thank you. Good job. Thanks for doing this.
Sure
Yeah,
thing.
this isn't an unprecedented effort. I don't think anyone could name when the last time something like this happened. So I think this huge lift is hopefully worthwhile and shows the broad interest and how, I mean, we just talk about it when it comes to transportation and community vitality, the need to coordinate across departments. This is taking that to a whole nother level. So thanks for chugging away at this.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of nice opportunity to have sort of this, you know, proactive trying to, I know we try to do this in certain ways, but it's easy to be reactive when things come to us. But I think asking boards to be sort of proactive in this way is maybe a little hard sometimes for folks to sort of feel that out. But also I think some folks are really excited about that opportunity. So yeah, so that's good.
Yeah. Ryan, did you have something for this or otherwise?
Not on Becky. I'm supportive and I'm appreciative of the work you're doing, Becky. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Ryan, I think I saw you had something about the payment management program.
Yes. So I'd like to see if I could interest anybody in a brief discussion on the topic of pavement financing, and which I'll just shortly explain. And you feel free to call me off this if not of interest. But my interest was piqued listening to the city council meeting last Thursday. In that at the end of a discussion about how the city is fiscally constrained, how we're going to pay for pavement financing. And it's not just that the city is constrained, but as we just heard, money stands in the way of us being able to literally make our streets safer. And so, you know, in a similar way that I think there's an emerging recognition among a lot of people, including on our city council, that parking management can do a lot of things. I think the way that we manage pavement also has some similarities. And so, you know, I think my quick thought on this is that if all users of transportation use pavement the same way and had the same impact on it, this wouldn't be very noteworthy discussion. But that's not the case. And I sent an email to you all a few days ago with a few bullet points that I'd like to read just so we have it here for the record. And then I'm going to propose just a quick perspective and then see if anybody wants to add to it. So just 4 things to say. One, we know that heavier vehicles have an exponentially greater impact on roads while doing more to pollute and endanger the public. And at the upper end of the weight of personal passenger vehicles, that range is increasing, yet people still have the ability generally to buy conventionally sized vehicles. So we have this range of impacts is increasing. I mean, in terms of the types of impacts that users have. Secondly, with electrification, the range is stretching further, both on the high end with respect to, say, like very heavy SUVs that have big batteries, but also with respect to the low end, and that with micromobility and e-bikes, people are starting to use scooters and e-bikes instead of cars, which is reducing their per person impact. And then maybe more as like a kind of a premise, just to be clear, we have a lot of policy goals in which Boulder expresses an intent to significantly increase safe and effective biking and walking. So those goals include mode shift, Vision Zero, and VMT reduction, and GHG reduction. And the modes of biking and walking, if you can think of them as modes, have very minimal impact on the cost of maintaining our pavement. And my final kind of bullet point here on observations is that the City of Boulder is a real center of leadership with transportation demand management. This is a topic that our staff knows well, our council and TAB talk about, and we in general should have the ability to think creatively about how to align travel behavior with outcomes that create the most public benefit. So to summarize all this, in my mind, I think we have an interest in at least asking the question for a city and a department that is looking for ways to find money, pave roads, which is evidently, something we really need to get our arms around. I think we have an opportunity to at least consider, are there any innovations or, new thinking that we should offer that City Council should be thinking about with respect to financial strategies? And I guess I would offer, I think there's at least two things that I would want City Council to really be mulling over as we consider raising some new slug of money. And one of those is the idea of user-based design in how we do fees. So one way or another, and maybe I don't mean 100% users pay one-to-one for their impacts, but one way or another, we start to think about ways to ask users who either have heavier vehicles, probably weight-based, but to some extent heavier vehicles, do something more to help to pay into this system. There's also mileage-based and other approaches, but just the general idea that to consider that there's a user-based framework we ought to look at. And then the other conceptual idea is that we have an opportunity to be more resource efficient in the way that we determine the overall footprint of pavement needed by the way that we manage parking policy and our land use overall. And so we can control the denominator of pavement needed in general. And these might be things that are long-term, would take a lot more than just what we can do as a city on this first iteration. But I just wanted to throw it out there that I think City Council should at least be hearing as we go through this discussion about how do we finance our next pavement, that there are ways to think about this that are innovative. So I'll entertain any agreement, additions, or anything else. And if nobody wants to talk about this, I'm happy to just let it go, but I thought I'd try. Oh, okay.
Ryan, I was just also going to just add, so the Transportation Legislative Review Committee actually is, in the process of drafting potential bills for next session. And I can't remember which senator, Jean Sanson might know if she's listening to this, but a senator or senators actually have proposed a bill around this idea of through registration, fees that vehicles of a certain type and size are required to pay into an enterprise fund that would then fund transportation improvement projects, is I think the general gist of the proposed draft bills so far. And Jean told me it's Senator Cutter who's proposing this. So I think it's being talked about, at the statewide level, and just wanted you to have that awareness.
Thanks, Natalie. I did not know that. Becky did and sent me an article on that. So yeah, there's a CPR article. Some of that. Becky, that. Actually, Natalie, can I ask you while you're on there, do you know offhand like how to think about what does pavement cost? Like whether it's in annual terms, like what's the
I
magnitude?
don't, but we have a wonderful team of people who do. If Garrett is listening, he's welcome to chime in here around the pavement, cost of pavement and future costs of pavement.
So Ryan, well, let me say for the record, my name is Garrett Slater, Principal Transportation Projects Engineer, and I understand that your question is the cost of pavement. Is that?
Yeah, so big picture. If City Council says we want all the potholes gone everywhere, make the pavement be smooth and awesome, like what does that cost, and how to think about the way that costs?
Yes, I am reticent to give you a number off the top of my head right now because that's a very important question. We aren't accustomed to looking at what the cost would be to address everything all at once. But we can do some research and follow up with you soon on that, Ryan.
Thanks for that. And
it would be a big number.
I mean, I'm
It
not
would.
either, but this came up. This came up on Thursday. One of the council members said, "Hey, maybe we should. It's a core function of government to make sure potholes don't exist, and we should be considering it like a pavement district." I mean, that came up. So, like the question of like the scope of paying for pavement is like this is now. So thanks for being able to give that a look.
You bet.
Thanks, Ryan. Becky?
Thanks. I emailed Ryan about this, but I'll just mention one of my thoughts is, that it's hard to your point about the denominator, Ryan, that it's hard to separate, the land use design from how much pavement we have. And if we have a mile of road serving not very many people versus a mile of road serving a lot more people because of the land uses, then that's going to change like how much money everyone needs to be putting in to maintain the system. And I realize that's very overly simplistic, and I definitely don't know all the mechanisms behind how the funding is generated and allocated. But, I wonder, there's sort of a long-term sustainability issue that seems like a lot of cities are dealing with as far as building systems that just were never maintainable cost-wise, and so require a lot of sort of hard choices or coming up with new money to satisfy something that was just never really affordable to maintain. So that's not a very practical response, I guess, in the sense of what can be done. But I guess I think of as council's really serious about having the resources to really maintain all the infrastructure, then it's impossible to really handle that without addressing the fundamentals of what's required to support our land use choices.
I guess, can I just respond and say, I think that's a really good point, Becky. Maybe there's like a third that you're adding a third conceptual idea in here, which is, what are who is generating, what developments are generating or maintaining the need or the impact. And I just think this is one of those topics where council doesn't necessarily know that this is like a question that they can ask, but what they do know is we don't have enough money, and our department is we don't have enough money. And so I guess I'm just trying to raise that this might be a way to generate money, and it's who if not TAP, then to at least try to raise some innovative thinking about it. So I think that's a good third one.
And it connects to quick comment. It connects to the off-street parking policy work too, because parking isn't necessarily the highest value, tax value generating use of a land, often isn't. And so if land can be devoted to things that generate more revenue, I mean, again, I know it can be complicated in other ways, but being able to build higher, more revenue generating things than parking lots that we force and require to be built, is just one of the many ways to sort of get at some of these issues.
I don't think it totally answers the question, but you could also look at the CIP in years past, how much money's been allocated to the pavement management program, and remembering that some of that goes to curb work and curb ramps. But if people are dissatisfied with the current condition more than twice as much, maybe we can do twice as much repair and maintenance. But I think yeah, it'd probably be a hard thing to put an exact number on, because as we've seen in years past, there are fluctuations from year to year in the material prices, and then the lifetime of the infrastructure is decades long, so it's complex. But yeah, thanks for bringing this up, and I do worry about we're incentivizing EVs, and we know the damage that those do, so it might get worse before it gets better. Is that all you had, Ryan?
Yeah, unless Taylor or Trini have anything. No. Okay. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna write some of this down and maybe think about a way to I don't know how to share it exactly, but yeah, I'm good for now. I'll maybe come back on this. Thanks.
So Ryan, I just wanted to weigh in on my general support in the direction you're headed. Thank you.
Thanks.
I had an update I wanted to provide pertaining to 30th and Colorado. On the TAB CIP bike tour, we stopped at the 30th and Colorado intersection to see the two underpasses that were open last week. I didn't make the opening. And an attendee asked how much the project cost. We were told it was 12 million and a steal because it cost the city only $4 million. I suspected these figures weren't right. However, with the personnel involved in the history of information accuracy issues, knew it wasn't the best place to ask that question, decided to follow up after fact, and that'd be more appropriate. I followed up with Natalie, and she confirmed the 12 million figure. I questioned why we were being told 12 when the CIP material said it cost more. When we've been presented on this in the past, it costs more, and the project website said it costs more. The website said 15.9 million. And so last week I got a response that indicated that the figure on the website was correct. So again, 15.9, and a table with a project cost breakdown. So I wanted to share a couple things that stood out. The contribution from the city was almost 7 million, so twice what we were told on the tour. And C wasn't getting credit for a $2 million contribution they made. The project was celebrated, the large contributions that the CU and the city pulled together as a partnership, but the sum on the website was 2 million less than the sum of the CU and city contributions in the table that was trying to clarify the question in the first place. So I followed up to see if the website should include that so we can honor CU and their partnership with what they contributed, and got a boilerplate response without really the question being acknowledged. So remained confused, followed up, got a response that the 2 million was omitted because it was part of the relocation for CU Fiber, and therefore it can be considered a private utility cost, and private utility costs typically aren't included in city budgets for our accounting reasons. Also found it interesting to learn that there were 4 more entities that had to relocate their utilities, and each of those was a pretty significant cost. So in the interest of transparency, since most of us and staff and even some community members were on the ride, wanted to provide what I think the contributions were. 7.95 million from the city, 5.2 million from CU, and 4.75 from a tip grant. So the sum of that is 17.9 million across the partnership, including, but then if you pull that 2 million out, you get the number that's on the website for the project total, even though the fiber stuff I believe was ancillary to the project with the way that the geometries of that intersection worked. So why do I think this matters? It's a very uncomfortable conversation for me. I don't like doing this, but the project is literally set in stone, and it'll likely remain the way it is longer than any of us will be around. Some of these tunnels, they last forever. And the project cost is a matter of fact. When someone asks how much did this project cost, it's a simple question that should be dignified with a transparent answer on the first try, I would hope, or the second try, or the third. Both curious taxpayers and city officials deserve pretty basic information on what might be the most expensive City of Boulder capital project in my time on the board, if not a bit longer. As was mentioned earlier, almost verbatim, was the transportation mobility department will never have limitless resources. To make the progress towards our community's goals, like we discussed tonight with the Vision Zero data, we're going to have to best utilize our resources. And I think we can all understand each other better and learn from discussions about cost benefit. If you ask 10 people what the benefit of a project is, you can expect 10 different answers, and that's great. Great to learn from one another. If you ask 10 different people how much a completed project costs, you should not get 10 wide-ranging answers. And in speaking to several of the tour attendees about the project costs, both board members and community members who joined us, I was well on my way to getting 10 different answers, more than halfway there. We also just received an email from a community member who tunes in our meetings pretty often, citing a $12 million project cost. People are pretty thoroughly confused. And don't need to rehash conversations years ago, but we've been accused of why we got to this point, but we were accused of not understanding our role as a board. And I don't understand how we can meet the expectations of those who have questioned us if both sides aren't coming to our conversations in a transparent and ethical manner. It's somewhat unclear to me what the expectations of staff are. In the Boulder Revised Code, there's a section called expectations. And at times I really struggle to see how or if those are being met. We'll never be able to effectively communicate with council on transportation policy, our charter purpose, if people have to jump through hoops to get basic information. And it only gets more complicated with, for example, when individuals in the department have not been transparent about budgets like this and maybe some other things. Individuals in the department haven't been transparent about the structural integrity of a bridge. An individual in the department selectively quoting a tab motion to their choosing, or individuals in the department summarizing community engagement in ways that might justify their actions, but couldn't be backed up with evidence when Uri asked them to do so. And I want to be clear, because it's been pointed out, maybe I maybe haven't always been great about this. My concerns they don't apply broadly. I have no reason to think that most staff members are doing anything but an honest job that is in the best interest of our community. My concerns are relatively isolated, but they've been going on for years and years. We've talked about this from time to time. And I feel this is an appropriate forum to voice them, because some individuals on staff choose to use this forum in ways that undermine not only TAB, but their coworkers and the community members who take their time to tune in to this. And the individuals who oversee the department resources, like tonight, are continuously telling city officials and taxpayers that the department is underfunded and that more progress on our TMP goals is dependent on more funding, is how it's historically been framed. And I would hope in the case of this capital projects and all projects that they're willing to be transparent about resource implications and willing to engage in meaningful discussions on benefits. If individuals on staff, TAB, council, anyone throughout the community want to celebrate this underpass and protected intersection project as a cost-effective partnership project, they're obviously welcome to do so. If I want to join in the others who we've heard from over the years who question the cost effectiveness of spending somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years of non-maintenance improvement budget on a single intersection, one intersection that in the last 6 years has been the location of 2 of our 300 severe crashes. We're obviously welcome to question if that is a data-based approach that is spending our money wisely. So at this point, what's most concerning to me at this recent project is that the 2 individuals within the department most responsible for overseeing our transportation tax dollars either had the courage to throw themselves a public celebration last week while lacking the courage to tell us clearly how much they spent, or they didn't actually understand how our tax dollars were being spent, but were making some pretty strong assertions about what had been done. Moving forward, it's really exciting the conversations that we're about to have on some potentially transformative projects, conversations that are going to be between TAB and staff, between staff and council, council and TAB, community members weighing in the whole time. And I worry that those will be at risk of succeeding if we don't respect one another and hold ourselves to reasonable expectations. And to maybe end on a slightly high note, it's great to finally have an ACRADE intersection in the city. I think we probably would have been a leader 10 years ago, well on our way 5 years ago. I'm hoping we can learn from this one though. We can anticipate. I've heard great things and some small concerns that I think we can take into consideration in the future and hopefully improve this sort of ACRADE infrastructure. And then below grade, of course, I still haven't seen it, but I saw some videos of somebody passing through the underpass, and it's gorgeous. It looks expensive, certainly. So it'll be here for, like I said, much longer than us. People will enjoy it for sure. But yeah, just getting back to what I tried to raise a few years ago, the whole ethics, candor, transparency. This feels like the latest in a isolated but recurring thing that undermines all of our efforts here.
Well, I'll respond. Thanks, Alex, since I'm one of the two people that you're talking about. So yeah, the communication that we had, I know Garrett on the CIP tour shared the $12 million number. And when you reached out to me, I had checked with Garrett to confirm the 12 million, and he was referencing a construction cost number from a overall construction contract, just off the top of his head. And so we recognize that that was not the full picture, and address that in the email. And I'm happy to send that whole email chain to the entire TAP board. And then as we kind of broke down all of the costs, that CU fiber 2 million was not in the 15.9 for the reasons that you explained and the reasons that we explained in the email. So definitely recognize that there's a need to just make sure that we're talking about the total project cost consistently. I think we were going to update the project website. If we haven't yet, we plan to do that, to just lay out all those costs, and including the CU fiber, and recognizing that there were other fiber relocation costs as well as part of the project. So we plan to do that, and thank you for your feedback, Alex.
Thanks. Yeah, it looked like the website had been updated to reflect that.
Great.
It was just took a while to get. I was mentioned that I was confused and it wasn't adding up, and so I appreciated when I, on a second or third try, got a response there.
You bet.
So I'm fine moving on. If everyone else is, these are very uncomfortable, but if our meetings are used to pass along things that need to be corrected, they ought to be corrected, I think. So if we're comfortable moving on, I know Trini, you had an announcement about an event that is near and dear to you, so maybe that can be a slightly more positive note for us to end on.
Yeah, and thank you, Alex, for addressing these things. I think that, like in every relationship, I think we need to talk about things to make sure that, we are all on the same page and clear with our relationships moving forward. And I appreciate you speaking up, and you, Natalie, very much. So yeah, so I just wanted to bring forward the World Day of Remembrance. I have been very grateful for all the support that the city has offered the World Day of Remembrance in the past, and it's going to be the third Sunday of November, as always. We're working with some families to make sure that this day is memorable, and I will give more updates in the next TAB meeting. But if you can please make sure to mark your calendars, because we would love for all of you to attend. And yeah, it's the third Sunday of November.
The 19th, is that?
Yes.
Looks like it. Just put it on my calendar.
Thank you. And
Jenny.
it will be during the day. It won't be at night. I will not do that anymore. So for a day event, hopefully we'll get a nice and sunny day. So
Hope so.
yeah.
Any other items under matters? Not see any. As always, feel free to reach out if you have any for next month. Speaking of next month, the tentative things on our agenda at least are the annual snow and ice program removal. And then excited to get going on the conversation about photo speed radar enforcement resolution. And yeah. And so 2 things that we heard from community members to a degree about earlier today. So hopefully if they're still with us tonight, they might tune in then. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Who was the first?
I moved, we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, Ryan with the motion, Trini with the second. All those in favor? Unanimous with 5 votes. Thank you, everyone, for staying on late, and we'll see you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.